On this episode of the Bears Talk podcast, we get into the 2023 Chicago Bears free agency cycle, specifically a top 5 big board that general manager Ryan pulls, a top 5 free agents that he absolutely, positively must target, in my opinion, and in the opinion of our special guest, the Locked On Bears host and a regular contributor here to the Bears Talk podcast, Lorin Cox. We're going to kind of have, I don't know if it's competing big boards for free agency, maybe. We have the same 5 guys. We didn't share our big boards before the show, so we're going to have live reactions, real, actual, on-the-spot reactions to who Lorin likes, who I like, and who you like. We're going to go through some tweets that you guys sent us in advance of the show about the free agents that you want coming to Chicago as well. Let's get after it, Bears fans, on the Bears Talk podcast. So, Bears fans, I heard your comments loud and clear on the last video we did here on YouTube, and for all you listeners on the Bears Talk podcast, when we did a 2023 mock draft for the Bears. And it took a little while to get into the meat of that show because on the same day, the Bears introduced their new president and CEO Kevin Warren. So we spent some time at the beginning of the show recapping his commentary. You guys were a little frustrated that it took about 10 minutes to get into the actual mock draft, so we're not going to do that today. We're not going to keep you waiting. We're going to dive right in to the top 5 free agents that I think the Chicago Bears should sign and that our guest, who I'm bringing on right now, Lorin Cox, thinks that they should bring to the show. Let me unmute him. Lorin, the host of the Locked On Bears podcast. You can find him on Twitter at CoxSports1. That's COX Sports 1. He's one of my favorite Bears follows. His podcast is a must listen to every single morning. And he's a world traveler, fresh off of his trip to, I think, Iceland and Paris and who knows where else. Lorin, have you readjusted to the Eastern or Central or Western, I don't know where you are right now, time zone? And are you ready to talk some Bears free agency?
I don't know where I am right now either, but I do know that wherever I am ready to talk Bears free agency. I just wish I had a jacket as sharp as yours. I really like that.
Hey, man, listen, this is an old school. This is an oldie but a goodie. It's done me well, especially on these cold January nights. Speaking of world traveling, let me put a little preview out there. I don't know if it's a preview. I don't even know what the right word is, but Lorin and I will both be in Mobile, Alabama in 1 week at the 2023 Reese's Senior Bowl, where you're going to get top-notch coverage from BearsTalk.com, the Bears Talk podcast, Locked On Bears. There's going to be probably, I would assume, Lorin, correct me if I'm wrong, but some crossover shows where I'm going to hop on Locked On Bears. He's going to come back on Bears Talk as well, and we're going to have you guys covered from all angles from a Chicago Bears perspective. Offensive coordinator Luke Getsy is one of the head coaches down there. The Bears have 4 other coaches from the coaching staff participating in the game, so there's going to be a lot of Bears-centered commentary all week long. It's going to be a Bears all-star game, so make sure you are subscribed to this channel. Make sure you are subscribed to the Bears Talk podcast. Make sure you're going to BearsTalk.com as often as possible. And make sure you subscribe to Locked On Bears because you're not going to get better Bears draft Senior Bowl coverage next week than on all of those outlets. So with that out of the way, Lorin, we're not wasting any time today. The Bears Talk universe had let me know in the last show that I spoke too long about Kevin Warren. They wanted mock draft goodness. We gave it to them, but it took a little time. We're not going to do that this time. Bears talkers, make sure you leave those comments. Leave those replies. I read them, and it matters. I read and react to what you want to see. So we're diving right into this. The top 5 free agents that Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears should target, according to me and according to Lorin. And since I'm the host of the show, Lorin, of course, I'm going first. I'm going to break out my list, and I'm going to start with the hottest of hot takes. The number 5 guy on my board, and he could easily be number 1, but I'm not going to go to extremes.
You started from the bottom.
What's that?
You started from the bottom and working your way up to 1?
Starting from the bottom and working our way up.
Gotcha.
Number 5 is none other than New York Giants running back, Saquon Barkley. I know what Bears fans are going to say in the comments, and I know the hate I'm going to get on Twitter. After a season where the Chicago Bears led the league in rushing, set franchise records for rushing yards in a regular season, Khalil Herbert, a more than capable starting running back, Justin Fields himself putting up over 1,140 rushing yards. Running back is not a need. Running back is not a problem position on the team, and I completely understand that. But Saquon Barkley is not a running back. Saquon Barkley is a nuclear offensive weapon. Saquon Barkley, as I've said in previous episodes, and I've said on BearsTalk.com, if he was signed by the Bears today, he's the best receiver on the team. He is the Christian McCaffrey effect. He's the kind of guy who can do everything from anywhere on the field, not to mention he's 230 pounds and can flip the field in one carry. Just picture, Lorin, Saquon Barkley and Justin Fields in the same backfield. To me, it instantly elevates the Chicago Bears offense to one of the scariest in the NFC North with one signing. And that's before we even get into wide receivers or offensive linemen that could be added in free agency in the draft. I know Saquon Barkley said on Monday, or a report came out on Monday, he's not looking to reset the running back market, but a $16 million per year contract is something he's looking for. Sign me up. The Bears have so much money to spend. They have to spend money. They have to get over the salary cap floor, let alone just add enough pieces to the team, these high level of the elite type talents, before they even come close to maxing out their spending power. Saquon Barkley, to me, he's number 5. He's a luxury signing, but he's a big ticket signing who will level up Justin Fields, level up the offense, and bring some excitement to Soldier Field.
I don't think I disagree with anything you said there. I don't have him in my top 5 list. I do think that I think it's an underrated need to get a running back in Chicago that can be a more effective.
Lorin, if you don't have Saquon Barkley in your top 5 free agent list, it's already a terrible list. This is a horrible list. I want everybody to rip your list apart in the comments. Because if you don't think Saquon Barkley, I don't care who you have at running back, unless you're one of the top 3 or 4 teams with the elite of the elite running backs, Saquon Barkley is an upgrade for your team no matter what, no matter how good or bad your team is, no matter how many needs you have. Saquon Barkley's different. He's got to be at least in your top 5. Did he at least get like some consideration for your board here?
Well, absolutely. I was debating squeezing him in there at the bottom about where you have too. But I'm scared, in general, of paying running back $16 million. I know Barkley is a lot more than running back. I agree. He's much more like, you think of it as adding a wide receiver. The Bears need playmakers, pass catchers, regardless of position. I'm scared that he had those 2 injured on and off seasons of struggles, and that the running back position is one that historically doesn't last super, super long. He's already at 1,000 career, or almost at 1,000 career carries, plus 250 career catches. He's taken a lot of hits on that body. And so it's not so much to me like the $16 million number is not what I'm scared of as much as what the guaranteed money is, right? I don't care what the salary number is going to be. If I can get out of the contract and have some flexibility after 2 or 3 seasons, I'm totally on board. But if he wants a lot of guaranteed money that ensures that I can't cut or trade him for 3 seasons, I'm scared of being locked with that much money at that position where he already has some of the injury history, and he's approaching that level of wear and tear on that running back body, where you might start to see a drop off at some point in the future. But with the right contract, with the right structure on the guaranteed money, it would be a massive upgrade for Chicago, and I would be thrilled to see him on the Bears for all the reasons that you listed there.
I think the other thing too with the Saquon Barkley contract is you probably can front load it. You probably can make it a deal that after the second season is one you might be able to get out of. And at the end of the day, you have to maximize the Justin Fields rookie contract window.
Yeah.
Just line it up to where by the time you got to re-sign Justin Fields, Saquon probably has played his last down for the Bears. This 2-year run, maybe a 3-year run. Saquon Barkley's contract, I don't think will hurt the team. Lorin, who's your number 5?
That all sounds reasonable to me. I took a similar approach, but not at the running back position. But this wide receiving free agent class is mediocre at best. It's pretty pathetic. And so, how can I add more pass catchers to help the Chicago Bears and help Justin Fields? I went Evan Ingram, tight end, Jacksonville Jaguars, formerly of the New York Giants, former Saquon Barkley teammate. Had maybe the best year of his career in an offense with a coach that figured out to stop trying to make him a blocking inline tight end and just use him as a big bodied wide receiver. But he was one of the leaders among tight ends in yards after the catch and in missed tackles forced. And being able to put him with Cole Kmet and have two different dynamic weapons at that position and really add a tight end that is more of that freak athlete. He's not, not quite the Kyle Pitts level of freak athlete, but he's not quite Travis Kelce. He's not quite George Kittle. He's not quite that, but he's certainly a step above athletically from Cole Kmet and doesn't have to get into Cole Kmet's playing time at all. They can perfectly coexist. You just use Evan Ingram as a big body wide receiver who can also run and make guys miss and make defenses decide, do I cover him with a linebacker? Well, he's a little big for that. Do I cover him with a cornerback? Like how are they going to be able to match up with him? I think that's a great way to still add pass catchers and playmakers for Justin Fields, even when there's not a wide receiver that you want to spend top dollar on.
I already could see what's coming in the comments. The first two players that we mentioned, a running back and a tight end, are probably two of the deepest positions in the NFL draft too this year, right? So that Bears fans, the smart, intelligent Bears fans who are the Bears talkers, who watch this and listen to this podcast and read bearstalk.com and go on Locked On Bears as well, they're going to say, why spend free agent money on players during an offseason when the 2023 NFL draft tight end class is going to be ridiculously loaded? Probably the best tight end class in maybe the last 5 years. The running back class, while Bijan is the big ticket, there's a drop off after him. There's plenty of second and third round guys who can come in and be a nice compliment to Khalil Herbert. But I think the point remains with Evan Ingram, a lot like I was saying with Saquon Barkley, is there are some players who have shown on the NFL field that they can make that instant impact. You don't have to worry about the rookie, the adjustment to life in the NFL. And Evan Ingram, the difference that he made for Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2022 is something that the Bears need to chase for Justin Fields in 2023. A guy who's not just a security blanket, but a security blanket who can also pick up yards after the catch. Cole Kmet is the security blanket. He had some moments where he was able to lower shoulder and grab some extra yards after the catch, and maybe the analytics will suggest that he's actually good after the catch. I haven't taken that deep of a dive into those analytics, but the eyes are my analytics. And what I see on Sundays is a guy who is a catch and fall, catch and maybe grind his way for another 2 or 3 yards. Evan Ingram has the elite speed, the top end speed. He was a first-round pick, a high first-round pick for a reason. And even though he's a 28-year-old guy, maybe a second half of the career blossoming player, wouldn't be a bad move, Lorin. I didn't even honestly think of Evan Ingram as a top 5 target, especially because of the way Ryan Poles spoke of Cole Kmet. It wouldn't surprise me if Ryan Poles gives Cole Kmet a new contract. He's eligible for a new contract this offseason. So possibly that's where the money's going to go in the tight end position. But adding a player like Evan Ingram, or even if we kind of look at the draft a little bit, targeting a pass-catching tight end, a true pass-catching tight end, is something the Bears should do. I've advocated for that for a while now, even entering the 2022 season after seeing Cole Kmet during 21. You kind of realize like he is a very high floor, moderately high ceiling player. And I think last year was his ceiling. So Evan Ingram's a good one. I thought you were going to go in a different direction with that one. I thought you were going to pull a name out of your hat that I have on my list somewhere. No spoilers, but you didn't. Since I started at 5, you go at 4.
When I go at 4, I look around and we start to get in some of these really good players and parsing them out, but there's such a big need for the Bears to address pass rush in any way, shape, or form. And so I went with Marcus Davenport as kind of the top edge rusher in an otherwise not like an edge rusher free agent class that you're not in love with. But I just feel like in an ideal world this offseason, if you could get 4 new defensive line starters or at least 3 across the board, that would be a great way to go. And a guy like Davenport, he's had injury issues through his career and has not been like a full-time every down player every year, but each season he has been consistently getting after the quarterback. And what I like about Davenport in particular is like you look at his sack numbers and you see a lot of fluctuation. He's coming off of a season now where he had just a half sack in 2022. And I think people are going to look at that and go, well, what the heck? Why can't he more consistently finish at the quarterback? But you see year in and year out, the percentage, like his pressure percentage and his pass rush win rate, the amount he's beating the offensive tackle or offensive lineman in front of him has been pretty steady every single season of his career. It's just some years He's able to get to the quarterback more quickly. The quarterbacks hold on to it a little bit longer. He's able to finish there. And some years the quarterbacks are getting rid of it, or he's missing the tackle on the quarterback, but he's winning his pass rushes at a pretty consistent rate. So he's a little bit of a buy low right now. And so I think his price can be a little bit more manageable to sign. And you can still have, you don't feel like you have to give him every single snap at the edge. You can still get guys like Dominique Robinson and Travis Gibson rotating in there, all the guys staying fresh, and he being a really consistent pressure generator, even if he's not always the sack generator, still goes a long way for a defense that just needs pass rushers.
And remember, a Marcus Davenport, who is kind of my honorable mention on this list, adding Marcus Davenport is almost not quite because of the total career production. But when the Bears signed Robert Quinn a couple years ago, Robert Quinn is a pass rusher who historically productive year, down year, productive year, down year, productive year, down year. And the productive year, as the football fans and analysts define it, is how many sacks did you have? And sometimes that's an unfair analytic, an unfair data point, because you can be just as effective of a pass rusher by causing disruption, forcing quarterbacks into bad throws. Like you said, Lorin, you might not get home every time. Like, not all sacks are created equal too. Some guys fall into sacks, and it's not really a credit to them or their pass rush. It's just maybe the other edge rusher pressured the quarterback to run right into their arms and they bear hug them down to the ground. So sometimes sacks can be misleading. And I think Davenport would be an obvious upgrade over who the Bears have right now. And remember something, with the number 1 pick, or if they trade to the number 2 pick, or if they trade down to the number 4 pick, there's a really good chance that it could be Marcus Davenport and Will Anderson Jr. coming to Chicago. Now that sounds a little bit different. It's not just Marcus Davenport as the guy who's supposed to be providing sacks. It's a combination of upgrades on this defense that is the sum will be probably much greater than the parts, although I think Will Anderson's a pretty special part. So I like that one, Lorin. I think that's a pretty good one. My number 4, who I think his price tag might have gone down because of Micah Parsons absolutely WWE hip tossing him in the playoff divisional game on Sunday, is right tackle Mike McGlinchey from the San Francisco 49ers. To me, sign me up. Sign me up for a guy like the true blue-collar, lunch-pail right tackle. He's not going to be an all-pro. He might not be the most elite athlete on the edge at this point in his career. Maybe there are moments where he gets his ass whooped like what happened against the Cowboys. But Mike McGlinchey is a massive upgrade over Larry Borum at right tackle, and he can be had in free agency. The 49ers, I have a hard time believing the 49ers are going to be able to bring him back. I doubt they're going to tag him. Maybe they will. But they have salary cap issues of their own. Adding Mike McGlinchey as a starting piece here of rebuilding the offensive line as the right tackle, a veteran plug-and-play 3 to 5 year guaranteed high-level starter, blocking the front side of Justin Fields, where he's not, one of the things a lot of analysts criticize Justin Fields for sometimes is maybe feeling the pressure a little too much, kind of bailing from the pocket a little too fast, trouble going through his progressions, probably because of the chaos that's around him. We talk all the time about the left tackle and how obviously that's the blind side, protecting quarterback from the massive, potentially career-ending hits. But a lot of the time, it's the pressure that's in your face that you can see coming at you that rattles the quarterback the most. That's why interior disruption is so critical. And that right tackle for the right-handed quarterback, they're seeing that and sensing that before any other pass rush. So if you can solidify that with an athletic, solid, pass blocking veteran right tackle, sign me up. Mike McGlinchey is number 4 on my list.
Mike McGlinchey is number 3 on my list. So it's good timing to transition there. I think we're going to start agreeing a little bit more as we get to the top of this list, because I think there's one more guy at a minimum above him. But no, I'm with you 100%. Like, as much as, you'd like Larry Borum to develop and retake that starting right tackle job, or I guess if you wanted to try and put Tevin Jenkins back out there, but I say leave Tevin Jenkins at right guard. You got that figured out. No need to reinvent the wheel there. Upgrade this offensive line at least in one position. You can't just go into next year and again say like, well, we like our young left tackle and we like, our young right guard, and we like our young right tackle, and go with all these young guys and just kind of hope that they take another step. Like, let's get real serious about putting an even better group in front of Justin Fields and making sure that it's as good as possible when you have so much salary cap space to be able to blow. It can be a different conversation if money is tight. You got to decide, okay, do we roll with Borum and Riley Reef again at right tackle, or would we rather take that money and upgrade another position that might be a bigger need? You got the cash this offseason, and like you said, I don't think McGlinchey's not the flashy like household name at offensive tackle. He might have made maybe one Pro Bowl at that, but he's not the guy that's going to be like reset the offensive tackle market, but you're going to get what you pay for, and you're going to feel like there's a stalwart there on the right side to just, him and Tevin Jenkins could be a really fun duo that's going to run some people over for years and years and years.
Absolutely. And when we talk about an offseason to build around Justin Fields, there may not be as many opportunities at wide receiver, but if you add from my list, Saquon Barkley and Mike McGlinchey, we're starting to cook with some gas here. We're starting to really level up the talent at two critical positions around Fields. And the number 3 guy on my list, since we kind of going to jump your third, since I already took him at McGlinchey, the number 3 guy on my list is a name that probably isn't a consensus target amongst Bear fans, but I think the spirit behind this name is what will make the most sense. And that's Jakobi Meyers, the wide receiver on the Patriots. Is he a special player? Absolutely not. Is he a wide receiver 1? Absolutely not. He might not even be a wide receiver 2 in the NFL, but he is an absolute contributing wide receiver, top 3 guy on your depth chart. And with the way the Bears wide receiver group is comprised right now, a banged up Darnell Mooney who should be 100% for next year, a Chase Claypool who is, we're hoping, is the Chase Claypool from his rookie and second season with Pittsburgh, with a year with Justin Fields to work into the offense in the offseason. We should see a different kind of Chase Claypool next year. But you need some insurance. You need a guy who you know what you're going to get every single week. He'll get you 6 catches for 70 yards and the occasional touchdown, and that is Jakobi Meyers. He's not going to be an all-pro. He's not going to be a Pro Bowler. He's not going to flip the field, but he'll be a reliable, good route running, pass catching wide receiver for Justin Fields to target in an offseason that it feels to me like the Bears could end up getting boxed out of adding a big time wide receiver in this over the next couple of months. There isn't one in free agency. Meyers might be the best one, actually. There isn't going to be a guy in the draft range that the Bears pick in the first round unless they trade all the way down to like the middle or late part of the first round. There's not going to be a player in that top 5 range that's worthy, a wide receiver that's worthy of the pick. Of course, the second round is a great area to target wide receivers annually. Every year, a wide receiver is there. But the 2023 draft class, it doesn't feel like the last 3 or 4 that we've seen come into the NFL in terms of wide receiver talent. There's not going to be an A.J. Brown in the second round, a DK Metcalf in the second round. Those were years when you had like 4 or 5 locks in the first round. This year, they're talking maybe wide receiver talk starts at pick 15, maybe pick 18. You don't have that guy like last year with Drake London and Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and Treylon Burks and Jahan Dotson. That's not the 2023 NFL draft. So the Bears could get boxed out from adding some kind of high caliber wide receiver. So to me, you got to get somebody. I mean, you can't go into the 2023 season with Mooney, Claypool, and Equanimous St. Brown, maybe N'Keal Harry comes back, hoping Velus Jones develops. That you just can't do that. You have to add a guy who you feel like is going to come in instantly, guaranteed locked into the top 3 of the pecking order at wide receiver. I think Jakobi Meyers can be that guy. Lorin, what do you think?
I'm surprised, first of all, that I agree that Meyers is probably the best of the best wide receiver options. If I have to sign a wide receiver in free agency, he would be the guy I would want to go after. But I wouldn't have him over Saquon Barkley or Mike McGlinchey on my list. A guy that's never been a 1,000-yard receiver in the NFL. I know the Patriots offense has not been, the most pass happy or the most most productive.
May I correct the record here, Lorin? Remember, I said the spirit of the name. Jakobi Meyers represents more about a strategy that has to be accomplished in this offseason. And I think adding a starting level wide receiver who is getting you 6 for 70 every game if he's targeted. He'll get 6 for 70, is more important than the running back, and is arguably more important than the right tackle at this point. Because you tell me, is there a guy on the Bears who you feel like can run the routes and catch the passes and be a reliable target for Justin Fields week in and week out? Do you think that guy's on the team? Do you think it's Darnell Mooney? If the answer is yes, then push Jacoby Myers off this list. I don't think that guy's on the team right now.
I don't know how much better Jacoby Myers is than Darnell Mooney. He might, I think he's better, but how much better? You know, like you said, like he's not you said he's for sure not a 1 and maybe not even a 2. And that's kind of where Darnell Mooney is in that conversation too. He's not a 1 bet, but he's a 2 maybe, or maybe a high end 3 there. And I don't know. I said, you feel like you got to do something, and he's the best of the options. So I'm not opposed to him as a free agent target by any means, but like I would certainly prioritize a guy like Barkley or McGlinchey certainly over them. And I feel like, you know, if Barkley can be maybe even close to as much of a receiving threat, like the right receiving back in the backfield or an Evan Ingram type, like they could be that difference maker in the passing game, even if they're not a wide receiver.
Let me say this, Lorin. Flip 3 and 5. Flip 4 with 3, put 3 to 5, put 5 to 4. You know what the beauty of this offseason is? The Bears have the money to sign all of them.
Yeah.
The Bears can go in to a negotiation with Mike McGlinchey's agent while having Jacoby Myers' agent on line 2 and Saquon Barkley signing a contract in Hallis Hall. They can sign all these guys. So if Ryan Poles says, here's the press conference where we show off all of our new shiny toys, all the free agents we signed, and in the middle of Saquon, on the right is Jacoby Myers, on the left is Mike McGlinchey, that's a pretty good free agent class. And you know who's smiling the most from ear to ear? Justin Fields. You don't like Jacoby Myers. That's fine. You're on the record saying you don't want him to be a Bear. Give me your number 2.
Well, my number 2, we start to get into, I think, some familiar territory. And I have a feeling my number 2 is going to be your number 1. And so I'm curious to see who your number 2 ends up being. But for me, where there's a real strength in this free agent class is on the defensive line, particularly in the interior. And I'm going to put Daron Payne from the Washington Commanders number 2 on my list. I mean, a guy who's had his career best season in Washington. He and Jonathan Allen on the interior are both monsters. He's more the sort of the nose tackle type, but they're a little bit interchangeable, and had 11.5 sacks this season on a Commanders team that was bad for a while and then was okay for a little while and was bad again. And I think he would be such a solidifying piece on the interior of this Bears defensive line that will make everybody else's job easier, especially the linebackers in terms of run defense. But also, he showed me a lot as a pass rusher this season. I wondered coming out of Alabama if he would be a little too one-dimensional, or how much he would be able to continue to grow his repertoire as a pass rusher. But I feel like he's really proven that this season, and progressively, I think, over the last couple of seasons, steady growth in that area. And I don't know that Washington has the money to re-sign him and everybody else that they want to keep on their team. And Jonathan Allen's going to get a lot of money at the defensive tackle spot, and they might make a quarterback change there and try and spend some money at that position too. So there's a good chance he can slip through the cracks and become available. And the Bears seem like the perfect team to spend the money to go get him and fill a perfect need for them on the interior.
Great minds almost think alike, Lorin. He's actually my number 1.
Yeah,
on the big board. So he's your 2. He's my 1. And to be honest with you, and this is going to possibly come back to haunt me because YouTube is like your permanent record. Part of why I want the Bears to sign Daron Payne is to increase the odds that they draft Will Anderson over Jalen Carter. Because if you put the money into Payne, you're not going to draft Jalen Carter. I mean, I get it. You might want to double up and make it a super strength in the interior of the defensive line. Those two guys next to each other, however you want to configure the defensive line, that would be a scary, scary sight for opposing offensive lines, opposing offensive coordinators, and especially opposing quarterbacks. But I think if the Bears signed Payne in free agency, which we got to keep your fingers crossed he even hits free agency, he could be a franchise tag candidate. If they sign him, I think they're out of Carter. I think that tells the whole world Will Anderson is the pick. Will Anderson's going to be the guy. And then they got to make sure they don't trade themselves out of position to land Anderson. But specifically just for the perspective of adding a player like Payne, it's exactly what you said, Lorin. And for me, as much as the draft is fun and exciting and provides hope and the shiny new car off the showroom floor, you don't know how these guys are going to transition when they get to the league. I mean, Solomon Thomas was the number 3 overall pick in the 2017 NFL draft. Everybody thought the Bears traded up for him, if you remember.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be the next Aaron Donald, and he was the next great interior defensive lineman. And I don't know what team he's even on now. I don't even know if he's still in the league. The transition from the offensive and defensive lines to the NFL isn't always that smooth. I mean, Jalen Carter's beaten a lot of centers, left guards, right guards who will never sniff the NFL. Deron Payne had 11 and a half sacks against the best centers and guards walking planet Earth. We know he can do it, and he's young. He's, 26 years old? He is the kind of guy you invest the money in. You don't take the number 1 pick or the number 2 pick or the number 4 pick and spend it on a projection for the most important position in Matt Eberflus's defense. You buy that. You fill that with the luxury item, the highest price tag item. You plug and play that. You immediately elevate and enhance your defensive line with as soon as the ink dries on the contract. That would be a game-changing, a defense-changing, a culture-changing signing for the defense. It's that important because it would have the ripple effect from the inside out and just allow Eberflus's defense to really finally take that step forward that I think it's going to take next year because of all the pieces they're going to be adding through the draft and free agency. So Deron Payne is my number 1. So since you gave your 2, I'll give my 2, and then we'll find out who your 1 is, and my 2 might be your 1.
I don't think so. I have a feeling. Can I guess that I think who your number 2 is?
Give it to me. Who do you think?
Your 2 is Orlando Brown.
My number 2 is left tackle from the Kansas City Chiefs, Orlando Brown. He's not your 1?
It is not my number 1. No, he's not on my list.
This is surprising and disappointing and shameful that he is not your number 1 at the very least. He didn't even make your top 5. That means
so it's like the Barkley conversation, right? It's like he's very good and he would be a huge upgrade for the Bears, but we're paying big money for a guy that he's kind of been just those little question marks, right? About okay, like he was unhappy, he's been unhappy multiple times. Do I fully trust putting the big 5-year, $18 million a year type contract in him? I know he's very good, and I know Ryan Poles has that familiarity with him, and he would be an upgrade for the Bears, but if I'm just like prioritizing the guys that I want more, like I would rather have McGlinchey at his price than Orlando Brown at his price, even though Orlando Brown is a better offensive tackle.
Hey, Lorin,
question.
Give me both of them. Listen, we laugh, but anyone that Ryan Poles wants to sign, he's going to get, because there's no team that can compete with the contract language. There's no team that can compete with the money. He can sign McGlinchey and Orlando Brown and then be even with everybody else after signing those 2 guys. Now everybody's on the same playing field, and he just locked in a left and right tackle for the next 5 years that will keep the franchise quarterback safe. The left tackle, when you have a chance to add a no-brainer, plug-and-play, high-level, reliable left tackle, whether it's in the draft, a can't-miss left tackle prospect, which is a little different than the interior lineman. The left tackles who are blue chippers like Penei Sewell and all these guys, there's a good chance they're going to do all right, right? The number 1 pick overall, I said this in the last show, it's always about the quarterback. You take the quarterback, you pass rush, you sack the quarterback, or you protect the quarterback. So like the left tackle is that kind of premium position. You can't pass one up when you have a chance to get one. Orlando Brown is like you're giving the Bears the chance to have 2 number 1 overall picks in this year's draft. You're giving them possibly Will Anderson to get after the quarterback. And you're giving them possibly Orlando Brown to protect the quarterback. Sure, they got to pay a lot of money for one of them. But at the end of the day, imagine an offseason where you saw the year before you have your quarterback, and then in the draft, you're getting the sack artist to destroy opposing quarterbacks. And by the way, you just shored up the most important position to protect your quarterback. That is an incredible opportunity for the Bears to have in basically a 6-month span of time, less than 12-month span of time. Justin Fields emerging to drafting a guy like Will Anderson Jr., were 3 of the most important elements of building a competitive contender every box is checked. So if you can add Orlando Brown, open the checkbook, Ryan Poles, bring him to Chicago. But now I'm dying to know, who's your number one?
Well, but you're not scared at all by Brown being the guy who, refused to go to right tackle in Baltimore until they essentially not had to trade him, but decided that trading him was going to be better, and then gets franchise tagged by the Chiefs and threatens to hold out the season. And there just seems to be things around him that if I'm going to give him the top left tackle money, am I certain 100% that he's the right fit culture wise and in my locker room, that his motivations are in the right place and that he's the selfless, do anything for the team type guy? Or is there a little bit more motivation for Orlando Brown there? That scares me just a little bit when we're talking that big amount of money. Similarly, like we said with Barkley and the injuries and the reaching the end of that sort of like usable time, where when he eventually, the injuries start to wear up to you and you wear down. And it's not because they're not a good player right now, but you're going to invest the very high end of the free agent market in that player. There's just like those little red flags that's why neither one of them was in my top 5. Not because I don't think they're maybe.
Well, you talk about Orlando Brown. You talk about Orlando. Ryan Poles is going to know. Like he's going to have the familiarity with Orlando Brown. He's going to know whether or not he can trust him, whether or not he can sign him. And Orlando Brown's father was kind of the same way. So there is like an edge to him, and there is maybe a little bit of that selfish part of his personality. But if he breaks the bank in free agency, he kind of can say, I checked that box with being a premier left tackle, getting paid like one. Now I want to go win a ring. In some ways it kind of clears the deck, and hopefully the priorities are team focused and with the eye on the ultimate prize. You won't know until you know.
Yeah.
There have been some free agents who, a guy like Todd Gurley signed all that big money in Los Angeles, looked like with the Rams back in the day, looked like he was going to be like Hall of Fame trajectory, and guys break down. It could happen at 25. It can happen at 28. Some guys can be productive into their 30s, obviously depending on the position, but even running backs. I mean, we've seen running backs be productive at 28, 29, 30s, like, the danger zone. Saquon's a young 26, in my opinion. I know you're talking about the injuries. Yeah, he's got some injuries. Give me a running back who hasn't suffered an injury like Saquon's, whether it's college, tearing ACLs, Tony Pollard fractured his ankle. He's going to get paid in free agency. Just about every guy has a walking wounded story. As well as, like, look, Stephon Diggs was traded from the Vikings to the Bills, and he was the ultimate, like, me first guy. And okay, kind of surfaced after their divisional loss on Sunday, the way he was reacting, on the sideline and whatnot. But that dude has put the Bills over the top. So sometimes you need a guy who might not be perfect, whether it's an injury history or maybe even a little bit of character concerns, to put you over the top. And to me, Orlando Brown is that guy.
The guy who I think would put the Bears over the top, and it's the number one guy on my list, is, and I debated 1 and 2 back and forth a lot, but I ended up leaning Javon Hargrave from the Philadelphia Eagles as just a slight step above Daron Payne in my eyes for a couple of reasons. Yeah, I mean, the downside is that he's about to turn 30. He is older, and so it's not as much he's not going to be here for 5 years, but you maybe give him a 5-year contract and you get a good 2 or 3 out of him. But for me, it's a combination of he has more proven experience, right? We've seen Daron Payne come in this season and have the career high in sack numbers, and he's been good in his previous season, but kind of took that big step forward this year. But we've seen Hargrave over the last couple of seasons, and even before that in Pittsburgh, have a more consistent track record of not only rushing the passer, but also being able to defend the run. But he's also a guy that has been able to do anything on the defensive line. Early on in Pittsburgh, he's like a nose tackle in the 3-4 defensive line, and they played some defensive end with him in there too, as they kind of adjusted him around the scheme. Comes to Philadelphia, plays the 3-technique defensive tackle. I think he can play any of your defensive line positions at a very, very high level and be super well-rounded as a pass rusher who's been consistently getting after the quarterback, been to the Pro Bowl, and a very good run defender as well, and has a little bit more of that proven resume than Daron Payne. Yeah, he's a little bit older, but I'll take the experience and more of the sure thing that feels like it comes from that compared to Payne. That's not to be a big knock on Payne. It's just if I'm trying to nitpick between the two, I find myself just moving Hargrave just a little bit farther above that as a guy who could be a really major difference maker on this Bears defensive line. Not that I would want to sign both, right? This is like get one or the other, and I would take Hargrave first. And if I can't get Hargrave, I'd be really happy with Daron Payne. And feeling like for all the reasons we talked about, Payne being a big benefit for this Bears defensive line, Hargrave would be everything and maybe just slightly more for me.
And, it's an interesting talking point because I think these are the exact conversations that are happening inside a House Hall. They're tiering their free agent board right now, and those two players are right next to each other. And you're going to have the conversations with Poles and his team of pro scouts and coaching staff, and they're going to be trying to figure out, right, who's the priority, because the window of time, if neither of these guys are tagged, the window of time to have an opportunity to reach an agreement on a contract is going to close quickly, because there's going to be a lot of teams jumping into this race to try to sign one or both of them. So they have to have their priority set. To me, I would still go a little bit more toward the youth side of it. I understand that, 30 as an interior defensive lineman, it's not ancient, but the Bears probably are still a year or two at least away from really making that big push, really making that big run. You'd like to think the guys that they spend a lot of money on this year are going to be part of that run, are going to be part of this run throughout that Justin Fields rookie contract, where they have him at least under control for the next 3 years with the 5th-year option. You want to think, all right, so the guys we sign now at the end of that tenure of Justin Fields, before we got to break the bank on him, hopefully he's continuing to get better and he could have a market-setting contract. Hargrave's going to be 33. What are you really getting from him that year? Whereas Payne is going to be not even 30 yet, right? Payne will be younger at the end of Justin Fields' contract than Hargrave is right now. So I think that could end up breaking the tie a little bit. But I wouldn't bet against, established production and more tape. A guy like Ryan Poles is a football guy. If he feels more confident in what a player's done on the field, if he's more confident in a guy like Hargrave over Payne, who had a breakout at a convenient year and maybe is more still a little bit of a projection, who knows? But what I'll say is this. I definitely think my list of 5 is better than yours, Lorin. And I know all the listeners to the Bears Talk podcast are going to go to Apple Podcasts. You're going to leave a 5-star rating, and you're going to review the show, and you're going to put your comments in those reviews so I can read them and bring them back and play it forward for our next show. I just realized, Lorin, we didn't read any of the tweets that people put on Twitter. I apologize for those of you who actually tweeted out some of your big boards. I will get into those on the next episode of the Bears Talk podcast that we will be broadcasting from Mobile, Alabama at the Senior Bowl. But head to Apple Podcasts, rate the show, leave your reviews, and in the reviews, comment. Give me your comments. I'm going to read all of them. And like I said, apply them to each show moving forward. On YouTube, subscribe. We want that subscriber count is helping the show continue to grow. It's helping the Bears Talk brand. We really appreciate everybody who subscribed so far. Share the show and tell your friends about it. Go to bearstalk.com. Check out all of our awesome Bears content. 'Tis the season to be a Bears fan. This is the best time of year for us. And it's probably the best offseason we're ever going to have in our lifetimes, with the most salary cap and the number 1 pick. So let's enjoy the ride. Go to Twitter. Follow my guy, Lorin Cox, at Cox Sports 1, COX Sports 1. Go to the Locked On Bears podcast. Subscribe to that on Apple Podcasts and everywhere you get your podcasts from. Lorin does a great job. I'm on Twitter at Bryan Perez NFL, Bryan with a Y, at the Bears Talk for the Bears Talk account. And Lorin, even though I just promoted the living hell out of all of your stuff, is there anything you want to share with the Bears Talk universe?
No, I just want to thank you for having me on. Of course, you plugged everything, so I don't need to go rehash everything all over again. But it's always a lot of fun doing this, and looking forward to doing it again down in Mobile. We're gonna have a lot of fun one way or another.
For sure, man. And listen, Bears fans, Bears talkers, Bears Talk universe, thank you again for listening to the show. Rate, review, subscribe, and as always, don't forget to always bear down.